I'm Morgan, 32 years old, and I've been hiding a secret from my family for 5 years. While they see me as the underachiever who lives in a modest apartment and drives a 10-year-old car, I've quietly built a real estate portfolio worth millions. Today at my sister Brittany's Thanksgiving dinner, when she mocked my homemade apple pie and called me too poor for proper dessert, I finally decided enough was enough. What happened next changed our family dynamic forever. Before I tell you how it all went down, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear more stories about standing up for yourself. Growing up in the Roberts family meant one thing above all else: appearances matter. My parents, Diana and Richard, weren't wealthy by any stretch, but they made sure everyone thought they were. Our house in suburban Connecticut was always just a little too big for our budget, the cars just a little too new, and the vacations just a little too extravagant. Behind closed doors, I witnessed the credit card statements, the arguments, and the stress that came with maintaining this facade. My sister Brittany, for years my senior at 36, embraced our parents' philosophy wholeheartedly. She excelled at creating the perfect image: designer clothes, luxury car, prestigious job title at a marketing firm, and an apartment in one of the trendiest buildings in the city. Everyone in our extended family viewed her as the successful daughter who had it all figured out. Then there was me, Morgan, the practical one, the disappointment. After college, instead of pursuing a flashy career in a big corporation, I chose to work for a small environmental consulting firm. The pay was decent but not extraordinary. What my family didn't know was that I made this choice deliberately, allowing me flexibility and time to focus on my true passion: real estate investment. "Morgan, why don't you try harder to get a promotion?" Mom would ask during our monthly phone calls. Brittany just got made associate director, and they gave her a company car. "I'm happy where I am, Mom," I'd respond, not mentioning that I'd just closed on my third rental property. The truth was, witnessing my parents' financial anxiety throughout childhood had profoundly shaped my relationship with money. I remembered the night when I was 12, coming downstairs for water to find Dad at the kitchen table, head in his hands, surrounded by bills. "Don't end up like this, Morgan," he'd said, not realizing the impact his words would have. By 27, I had saved enough for a down payment on my first small duplex. I lived in one unit and rented out the other, essentially living for free while building equity. From there, I reinvested every penny of profit, living well below my means. Nobody in my family understood why I clipped coupons, drove an older car, or rarely bought new clothes. They just thought I was struggling or lacked ambition. My big break came 18 months ago. Through careful networking and timing, I managed to acquire a 16-unit apartment building in a rapidly developing area of the city. The property needed work, but had tremendous potential. Coincidentally, it happened to be the building where Brittany had been renting for the past 3 years. The previous owner had been discreet about the sale, and I maintained the same property management company to handle day-to-day operations. As far as tenants knew, nothing had changed. Besides Brittany, my cousin Amanda and her husband lived there too, along with my Uncle Patrick, who had moved in after his divorce. None of them knew I was now their landlord. I had considered telling them, but always hesitated. Our family had a complicated relationship with money, and I worried about how they might react or what they might ask of me. As I drove to Brittany's Thanksgiving dinner in my practical Honda, I contemplated whether today might be the day to finally share my success. In the passenger seat sat my homemade apple pie, made with organic apples and a recipe I'd perfected over years. Brittany had assigned me dessert duty, probably expecting me to show up with something store-bought from the discount section. The thought of finally revealing my financial situation made my stomach twist with anxiety. Would they be proud? Jealous? Angry I hadn't helped them more? Or would they simply not believe me? I'd been the family underdog for so long that sometimes I wondered if I'd created a trap for myself. I pulled into the visitor parking space at Brittany's building, my building, technically, and grabbed the pie, taking a deep breath. The autumn air was crisp, and I could see the fancy Thanksgiving decorations through the lobby windows. Brittany always went all out for holidays, making sure her social media posts depicted the perfect family gathering. For years, I'd accepted my role as the less successful sister. Today, though, something felt different. Maybe it was time for the truth. Or maybe I'd just smile through another holiday of subtle condescension and backhanded compliments. Either way, I was about to find out. I balanced the apple pie in one hand and pressed the intercom button with the other. The system buzzed, and Brittany's voice came through. "Is that you, Morgan? Come on up." When the elevator doors opened on the 6th floor, I could already hear the sounds of the gathering, the murmur of conversations, occasional laughter, and soft jazz music that Brittany always played during her parties. I knocked on apartment 602, and seconds later, my sister swung open the door. Brittany stood there in a tailored burgundy dress, pearl earrings catching the light, her dark hair swept into a perfect updo. Her gaze immediately dropped to my outfit: dark jeans, a green sweater, and ankle boots. Nothing fancy, but clean and appropriate. Her smile tightened just slightly. "Morgan, you made it. Interesting outfit choice for Thanksgiving." She leaned in for an air kiss. "Is that homemade?" She nodded toward my pie, taking it with 2 fingers like it might contaminate her manicure. "Yes, I baked it fresh this morning," I replied, stepping inside. "Apple pie with a cinnamon crumble top. How rustic. I've got some gourmet desserts coming from Bellini's, but we can put this out too. Everyone needs options." She placed my pie on a side table rather than with the other food. The apartment was impeccably decorated with autumn-themed centerpieces, crystal glasses, and fine china. About 15 people were already there: our parents, Uncle Patrick, Aunt Grace, cousins Amanda and Rachel with their spouses, and a few family friends. Mom spotted me and came over, champagne flute in hand. "Morgan, sweetie, I was just telling Kathleen about Brittany's promotion. Isn't it wonderful? Senior director now." "That's great," I said, giving Mom a hug. "Congratulations, Brittany." My sister beamed. "The salary bump is substantial. We're thinking of upgrading to a bigger apartment, maybe in Bradford Heights." "Those luxury condos?" Dad joined us. "That's impressive, honey." "Morgan, how's that environmental job going? Still saving the whales or whatever it is?" "We mostly work on sustainable urban development, Dad. It's going well. Actually, I just finished a major project that—" "Richard, did you tell Morgan about our cruise plans?" Mom interrupted. "We're doing the Mediterranean next spring. 2 weeks, 5 countries." And just like that, my news was sidelined again. I nodded and smiled as they detailed their expensive vacation plans, noticing how Mom kept glancing at my outfit with slight disapproval. I excused myself and found Cousin Rachel in the kitchen, the only family member who never seemed to judge me. At 34, she was closest to my age and had always marched to her own drum, working as a nurse and caring more about helping others than appearances. "Need a drink?" she asked, sliding a glass of wine toward me. "I saw your entrance. Brittany's in rare form today." "When isn't she?" I took a grateful sip. "How are things at the hospital?" As Rachel told me about her work, I helped her arrange appetizers. This was our usual routine at family gatherings, finding each other and creating a small bubble of authenticity amid the performance. An hour later, everyone had arrived, and we gathered around Brittany's large dining table. I found myself seated between Uncle Patrick and Aunt Grace's new husband, Gerald. "So Morgan," Gerald began, "Diana tells me you work for some environmental group. Must be tough making ends meet in the nonprofit world." "Actually, we're a for-profit consultancy," I corrected gently. "The compensation is competitive." Uncle Patrick laughed. "Can't be that competitive. You're still driving that old Honda, right? No shame in it, kiddo. We can't all be high flyers like your sister." I felt my cheeks warm but maintained my smile. "I like my car. It's reliable." "Speaking of reliable," Patrick continued, lowering his voice, "between you and me, I'm having issues with the building management. Rent went up again last month. 3rd time in 2 years. Highway robbery, if you ask me." This caught me off guard. The property management company had implemented small, regular increases based on market rates, all approved by me. But hearing Patrick's perspective made me uncomfortable. "That's unfortunate," I managed. Unfortunate? It's criminal. Patrick stabbed a piece of turkey. Some faceless corporation buys the building and just keeps squeezing us. I'm thinking of organizing the tenants. Across the table, Brittany was holding court, describing her department's successful holiday marketing campaign. The client doubled their initial investment after seeing our numbers. My boss says it's the most successful fourth-quarter strategy we've ever executed. The conversation shifted to investments and real estate when our family friend Walter, a financial advisor, mentioned the hot housing market. Property values in this neighborhood have increased 17% just this year, he noted. Anyone owning real estate right now is making a killing. I couldn't help myself. It's a good time to have investment properties, especially multifamily units. The returns can be substantial if you approach it strategically. The table went quiet for a moment, and Brittany raised an eyebrow. Investment properties? That's cute, Morgan. She laughed lightly. Let the real owners speak. Walter was talking about serious investors, not people who read get-rich-quick articles online. Several family members chuckled, and I felt that familiar sting of dismissal. I took another sip of wine and said nothing. Actually, Cousin Amanda joined in. We might have to move soon. The rent here is getting ridiculous, and we heard they're planning renovations next year. I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. The renovation plans were mine. Upgrades to make the building more energy efficient and modernize the common areas. I hadn't realized how these business decisions were directly affecting my family. I'm sure you'll find something, Brittany said dismissively. Though nothing as nice as this building, not on your budget. The conversation continued, with more subtle digs at those with less impressive careers or financial situations. Each time I tried to contribute meaningfully, particularly about finance or real estate, Brittany would interrupt or redirect the conversation. By the time dinner was finishing, I felt depleted from the constant need to smile through the condescension. As people began clearing plates, Brittany disappeared into the kitchen, returning moments later with an elaborately decorated box from Bellini's, the most expensive bakery in the city. Time for dessert, she announced. I got us something special, their signature autumn spice cake with maple bourbon frosting. $60 a slice at the restaurant, but worth every penny for my favorite people. Everyone oohed and awed as she unveiled the cake. My homemade apple pie sat forgotten on the side table. The autumn spice cake took center stage as Brittany carefully sliced it, describing the intricate layers and exotic ingredients like she was hosting a cooking show. The cinnamon is imported from Sri Lanka, and the maple syrup comes from a small artisanal farm in Vermont, she explained, handing out the first pieces to our parents. I glanced at my apple pie, still sitting untouched on the side table. I'd spent hours on it, using organic apples from the local farmer's market and a crust recipe that had taken years to perfect. The cinnamon crumble topping had been golden brown and perfect when I'd removed it from the oven that morning. Brittany, I said, rising from my chair. I brought dessert too. Should I bring the apple pie to the table? My sister paused, knife hovering over the expensive cake.
Oh, right.
I almost forgot. Her tone suggested this was intentional. Sure, we can put it out as an alternative option. I retrieved my pie and placed it on the table. The homemade dessert looked rustic next to the professionally decorated cake, but I was proud of it. I used Granny Smith and Honeycrisp apples I offered. The combination gives it both tartness and sweetness. Aunt Grace peered at my pie. How nice, dear. It reminds me of the ones we used to make when you were little. Remember those baking sessions in my kitchen? I smiled genuinely for the first time that evening.
Ida.
I still use your technique for the crust. Brittany cleared her throat. Who wants the signature Bellini's cake? Mom? Dad? Walter and Patricia? One by one, she distributed slices of the expensive cake, deliberately skipping over me. When nearly everyone had been served, I noticed Rachel looking at my pie. I'd love to try your apple pie, Morgan, she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. I remember how amazing your baking was at the last family reunion. Cousin Amanda nodded. Me too. Your desserts are always delicious. Brittany's smile tightened as I cut slices for Rachel and Amanda. A few others requested to try both desserts, which seemed to irritate my sister further. Uncle Patrick took a bite of my pie and nodded appreciatively. "This is damn good, Morgan. Reminds me of how your grandmother used to bake." "Speaking of property," Walter said, returning to our earlier conversation, "the market's getting interesting. I have a client who just purchased a multi-unit building not far from here. Completely passive income now." "That's the dream," Dad said. "Making money while you sleep." I couldn't resist joining in. Actually, real estate investment isn't as passive as people think. There's a lot of work in property management, tenant relations, maintenance decisions. "And how would you know this?" Brittany interrupted, her voice sharp with annoyance. "I've done research," I replied carefully. "And I've talked to people in the industry." "Research," she repeated with a dismissive laugh. "Next you'll be giving investment advice based on YouTube videos." The table grew uncomfortable. Mom quickly changed the subject. "The cake is divine, Brittany. Worth every penny." Brittany preened at the compliment. "Only the best for my family. Some of us believe quality is worth paying for." The subtle dig wasn't lost on anyone. Rachel caught my eye across the table with a sympathetic glance. As dessert continued, the conversation turned to housing complaints. Amanda mentioned her concerns about the rumored renovations in the building. "I heard they're planning to redo all the common areas and upgrade the heating system," she said. "Which sounds nice, but you know they'll raise the rent again to cover it." "It's already too high," Uncle Patrick grumbled. "Blood-sucking landlords. They probably haven't even seen the building in person." I shifted uncomfortably, having personally walked through the building at least twice a month since purchasing it. "The worst part," Brittany added, "is that the owner is some faceless corporation. Empire Holdings or something. When I tried to negotiate my lease renewal, they wouldn't budge a penny." I nearly choked on my pie. Empire Holdings was my LLC, named after my grandmother's small hometown in Pennsylvania. The property management company handled all tenant communications under this name to maintain my privacy. "Maybe they have their reasons," I suggested quietly. "Maintenance costs are rising, and property taxes in this area increased substantially last year." Brittany rolled her eyes. "Look at you, defending the rich. Classic Morgan, always settling for less and making excuses for those who have more." "I'm not defending anyone," I said, feeling my patience wearing thin. "I'm just saying there are multiple perspectives to consider." "Multiple perspectives," she mimicked. "This is why you'll always be stuck in that entry-level job. No ambition, no understanding of how the real world works." The table fell silent. Even our parents looked uncomfortable now. "Brittany," Mom murmured. "That's enough." But my sister was on a roll. She turned to the table at large. "Morgan has always been like this. Settling for less, then pretending it's a choice. Her car is practically falling apart. She lives in that tiny apartment, and she brings homemade dessert because she can't afford to buy something decent." My cheeks burned with embarrassment and growing anger. 5 years of condescension and dismissal were bubbling to the surface. "There's nothing wrong with homemade," Rachel defended me. "Of course not," Brittany said with fake sweetness. "We all have to live within our means. Morgan's means just happen to be limited." She turned to me, gesturing toward my half-eaten slice of apple pie. "Maybe you're too poor for proper dessert, but at least you tried, sweetie." The room went completely silent. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, some embarrassed, others curious to see how I would respond. In that moment, something inside me snapped. 5 years of hiding my success, of smiling through condescension, of being the family underdog, it all came to a head. I carefully placed my fork down beside my plate. The time for hiding was over. "Maybe you're too poor for proper dessert." Brittany's words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. A few uncomfortable chuckles broke the silence, but most of our family members had the decency to look embarrassed by her cruelty. I sat there, fork suspended midair, a piece of my homemade apple pie waiting to complete its journey to my mouth. Time seemed to slow down as I contemplated my next move. For 5 years, I'd hidden my success from my family. For 5 years, I'd endured Brittany's condescension, my parents' well-meaning but misguided concern, and the family's collective perception of me as the underachiever. Morgan. My mother's voice broke through my thoughts. Are you okay, dear? I placed my fork down gently on my plate.
I'm fine, Mom.
Brittany smirked, clearly satisfied with having put me in my place once again. It's just a joke, Morgan. No need to be so sensitive. A joke, I repeated softly. Like the jokes you've been making at my expense since we were children? My sister's smirk faltered slightly. Oh, come on. Don't be dramatic. Remember when I was 10 and you told all your friends I wore secondhand clothes because we couldn't afford new ones? I continued, my voice steady despite the emotion building inside me. Or when you accidentally spilled punch on my dress before junior prom because you said it looked cheap anyway? That was ages ago, Brittany dismissed with a wave of her hand. And the punch was genuinely an accident.
Was it?
I asked, looking her directly in the eyes. Just like it was an accident that you forgot to tell me about Dad's retirement party until the day before, so I couldn't find anything nice to wear? The table had gone completely silent now. Even Uncle Patrick, who usually tried to lighten tense situations with inappropriate jokes, seemed to sense that this moment was different. Morgan, Dad began cautiously, let's not ruin Thanksgiving with old grievances. I'm not trying to ruin anything, Dad, I replied. I'm just tired of being the family punching bag because I choose to live differently than all of you. Different is one way to put it, Brittany muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. Some might call it unsuccessful. And there it was, the breaking point. 20-plus years of judgment and mockery crystallized in that one word. Unsuccessful. I pushed my chair back from the table and stood up. Excuse me for a moment. Without waiting for a response, I walked to the entryway where I'd left my purse. Inside was my laptop bag, and within it, a folder containing documents I'd brought on a whim. Not really planning to share them, but somehow knowing this day might come. When I returned to the table, everyone was engaged in awkward small talk, clearly trying to move past the uncomfortable moment. Rachel caught my eye and mouthed, "You okay?" I gave her a small nod. "Brittany," I said, interrupting whatever story Walter was telling to fill the silence. "You mentioned Empire Holdings earlier, the company that owns this building." She looked surprised by my change of subject. "Yes? What about them?" "You said they're a faceless corporation that doesn't care about tenants," I continued, pulling out a sleek leather portfolio from my bag. "That they keep raising the rent without justification." "Because they do," she replied, irritation evident in her tone. "What does this have to do with anything?" "I thought you might be interested in meeting the owner," I said calmly, opening the portfolio and removing several documents. "Since you have so many opinions about how they run things." Brittany rolled her eyes. "Unless you've somehow arranged a meeting with some millionaire property mogul, I don't see how that's possible right now." I laid the documents on the table, property deeds, LLC registration papers, tax forms, all bearing my name and the name Empire Holdings. "That won't be necessary," I replied, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. "You've been having Thanksgiving dinner with the owner all along." Confusion flickered across my sister's face as she glanced at the papers, then back at me. "What are you talking about?" "I own this building, Brittany. I am Empire Holdings." I turned to include the rest of the table in my revelation. "I've owned it for 18 months, along with 3 other properties in the city." The stunned silence that followed was deafening. My sister's face went from confusion to disbelief to something approaching horror. That's not possible," she stammered. "You can't afford, you drive a Honda?" "By choice," I replied. "Just like I choose to live in my duplex rather than a luxury apartment. Just like I choose to cook at home instead of eating at expensive restaurants. Just like I choose to bake my own desserts instead of spending $60 a slice at Bellini's." Mom reached for the property deed, examining it with wide eyes. "Morgan, is this real? You own Brittany's building?" "And Amanda's and Uncle Patrick's," I confirmed. "I bought it as an investment. The previous owner was looking for a quiet sale, and I had the capital from my other properties." "Other properties?" Dad echoed, looking completely lost. I nodded. I bought my first duplex 5 years ago. I live in half and rent the other half. Then I purchased a 4-unit building 2 years later and a 6-unit last year. This 16-unit building was my biggest acquisition. Brittany snatched the papers from our mother's hands, scrutinizing them as if looking for evidence of forgery. This has to be some kind of joke. Some elaborate prank to get back at me. It's not a joke, I said firmly. Check the county property records if you don't believe me. Call the management company and ask who signs their checks. Uncle Patrick was staring at me open-mouthed. You're my landlord? You're the one who approved the rent increases. Market standard increases, I clarified. Actually below market rate for this neighborhood. And the renovations Amanda mentioned are designed to improve energy efficiency and reduce utility costs in the long run. Brittany was still shaking her head, but the color had drained from her face as the reality began to sink in. Why didn't you tell us? She demanded, her voice rising. Why keep it a secret? Were you spying on us? Getting some kind of sick pleasure from hiding this? I wasn't spying on anyone, I replied. The management company handles day-to-day operations. I make big-picture decisions and review financial reports. But why the secrecy? Mom pressed. I looked around the table at my family members, all watching me with expressions ranging from shock to amazement to suspicion. Because of this exact reaction, I said finally, because in our family, money and success have always been about showing off, about proving your worth through what you own and what you spend. I wanted to succeed on my own terms, without the pressure to flaunt it or to bail everyone out. Bail everyone out? Brittany repeated incredulously. Is that what you think we want from you? Isn't it? I countered. Uncle Patrick just complained about his rent. Amanda's worried about having to move. And you, Brittany, how many times have you mentioned wanting a bigger apartment, a newer car, a more extravagant vacation, all while putting down my lifestyle choices? My sister's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. So this whole time, you've been what, laughing at us behind our backs? Playing poor while secretly being rich? That's sick, Morgan. No sicker than mocking someone for bringing homemade dessert because you think they can't afford to buy one, I replied, my voice finally betraying some emotion. No sicker than spending your life in debt to maintain appearances while judging others who live within their means. The room fell silent again. Rachel reached over and squeezed my hand under the table in silent support. After what felt like an eternity, Dad cleared his throat. Morgan, I don't understand. How did you afford these properties? We never helped with any down payments. I saved, I said simply. I lived frugally. I reinvested every penny of profit. I studied the market and made careful decisions. Everything I have, I built myself. While working at that environmental firm? Mom asked, still looking bewildered.
Yes.
It provides steady income, flexible hours, and work I actually care about, I explained. Not every career choice is about maximizing salary, Mom. Brittany abruptly pushed back from the table and stood up. I need some air, she muttered, walking quickly toward the balcony doors. I watched her go, feeling a complicated mix of emotions, relief at finally revealing my secret, regret at the hurt it had caused, but also a sense of vindication after years of enduring my sister's mockery. I never meant to ambush everyone like this, I said to the remaining family members. But I'm tired of being treated like the family failure when the truth is so different. Aunt Grace was the first to recover from the shock. Well, she said with a small laugh, I always said you had your grandmother's head for business. She would be proud. One by one, family members began to react, some with congratulations, others with lingering disbelief, and a few with awkward questions about their own living situations. Through it all, I noticed my parents exchanging glances, clearly struggling to reconcile their perception of their younger daughter with this new reality. Outside on the balcony, Brittany stood alone, her back to the dining room, shoulders rigid with tension. Despite everything, my heart ached for her. We had both been shaped by the same family dynamics, just in vastly different ways. After answering a barrage of questions from Uncle Patrick about building maintenance and from Amanda about the renovation timeline, I excused myself and headed toward the balcony. It was time for a long overdue conversation with my sister. I slid the balcony door open and stepped outside into the crisp November air. Brittany didn't turn around, but her shoulders tensed, acknowledging my presence. "If you've come to gloat, save it," she said, still facing the city skyline. I moved to stand beside her, leaving a careful distance between us. "That's not why I'm here." "Then why?" she demanded, finally turning to face me. Her mascara was slightly smudged, revealing that she'd been crying. Why reveal all this in front of everyone? Was it just to humiliate me? To get back at me for all the times I've supposedly been mean to you? It wasn't planned, I admitted. I've been debating whether to tell the family for months. But when you made that comment about me being too poor for proper dessert, I trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. "So, it was revenge," she concluded bitterly.
No, Brittany.
"It was self-defense." I leaned against the railing. "Do you have any idea what it's like to constantly be dismissed and belittled by your own sister? To have every life choice questioned and ridiculed? Oh, please. You've always been Mom and Dad's golden child. Morgan is so responsible. Morgan is so smart. Why can't you be more like Morgan?" She mimicked our mother's voice with surprising accuracy. I stared at her in disbelief. Are we remembering the same childhood? You were the star, Brittany. The beautiful one, the popular one, the successful one. I was just there. "That's not how I remember it," she muttered. Inside, we could see the family still gathered around the table, occasionally glancing our way. Some were examining my documents, passing them around for inspection. "Look," I said, turning back to my sister. "I didn't reveal all this to hurt you. I did it because I'm tired of hiding who I am and what I've accomplished. By deceiving everyone for years? By secretly becoming my landlord." Her voice rose. "Do you know how violating that feels? You've been collecting my rent checks, knowing about my lease terms, probably laughing about it the whole time." "I wasn't laughing about anything," I countered firmly. "The management company handles all tenant matters. I don't see individual rent checks or lease applications. And I specifically instructed them not to give me personal information about any tenants in the building." "But you knew we all lived here." "Yes, I knew. And honestly, it made me hesitate about buying the building." I sighed. But it was too good an investment to pass up, and I trusted the management company to maintain professional boundaries. Brittany was quiet for a moment, processing this information. "So all these years when I thought you were struggling financially, I was building wealth quietly," I finished for her. "Living below my means, saving, investing. While judging me for my spending habits," she added accusingly. "I never judged you, Brittany." "You judged me," I corrected her. "I don't care how you spend your money. I care about being mocked for my choices." Back inside, Dad was gesturing toward us through the glass, clearly wanting to join the conversation. I held up a hand, silently asking for more time. "So, what happens now?" Brittany asked, crossing her arms defensively. "Are you going to evict me? Raise my rent again? Use your power as my landlord to get back at me for being a terrible sister?" The question stung, revealing just how damaged our relationship was. "Of course not. Your lease is your lease. The management company will continue handling everything professionally. And the family? Are you going to start showing off your wealth now? Buy a fancy car and a penthouse to compete with me?" I shook my head. "That was never the point, Brittany. I'm not trying to compete with you. I never was. I just want to be respected for who I am and the choices I make." The balcony door slid open, and Mom stepped out tentatively. "Girls, your father, and I think we should talk as a family." Brittany brushed past her without a word, returning to the dining room. I followed more slowly, dreading the interrogation that was surely coming. Dad had collected all my documents and stacked them neatly at my place setting. The rest of the family watched with undisguised curiosity as Mom, Brittany, and I rejoined them. "Morgan," Dad began formally, Your mother and I would like to understand exactly what's been going on. I took a deep breath and explained everything from the beginning. My first property purchase, my investment strategy, how I'd managed to acquire the apartment building, and why I'd kept it secret from the family. But why not tell us? Mom asked, looking hurt. We're your parents. We would have been proud. Would you, though? I questioned gently. Or would you have expected me to start living differently? To spend more, show more, be more like Brittany. My sister flinched at this, but remained silent. And there was another reason, I continued. In our family, financial success has always been tied to obligations. If everyone knew I had money, the dynamic would change. Suddenly, I'd be expected to pay for things, to help out, to solve problems. So, you don't want to help your family? Uncle Patrick asked, sounding offended. That's not what I said, I clarified. I'm happy to help when it makes sense. But I wanted it to be on my terms, not because of expectations or guilt. Dad nodded slowly, beginning to understand. You wanted to make your own decisions without pressure. Exactly, I said, relieved that someone finally got it. I still think it was underhanded, Brittany interjected. Secretly buying the building where your own sister lives? Perhaps, I acknowledged. But would you have preferred I passed on a good investment opportunity just because you happen to live there? Before she could answer, Cousin Amanda spoke up. So, what about the renovations? Are we all going to have to move out when they happen? I turned to her, grateful for the practical question. No, the work will be done in phases to minimize disruption. And there's a clause in the contract that limits how much rent can increase afterward. You're actually being fairly generous, Walter commented, having reviewed my documents. These returns are solid but not aggressive. You could be charging more. I want stable, happy tenants more than I want to maximize short-term profit, I explained. That's actually smart business, Dad admitted, sounding impressed despite himself. I noticed my sister watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read, something between resentment and a grudging reassessment. Mom reached across the table and took my hand. Morgan, we're sorry if we ever made you feel like your choices weren't valued. We just worried about you. I know, Mom. I squeezed her hand. But I was doing fine all along. Better than fine. So what now? Aunt Grace asked, looking around the table. Does this change how we operate as a family? It was the question hanging over all of us. Would this revelation permanently alter our family dynamic? Could Brittany and I move past this? Would my parents stop comparing us now that they knew the truth? I looked at my sister, waiting for her reaction. After a long moment, she sighed heavily. I need some time to process all this, she said finally. Finding out your little sister is secretly your landlord isn't exactly an everyday occurrence. Fair enough, I nodded. Take all the time you need. The tension in the room gradually began to dissipate as family members digested the news. Some, like Rachel and Walter, seemed genuinely happy for my success. Others, like Uncle Patrick, were still processing the implications for their own living situations. My parents appeared torn between pride in my accomplishments and confusion about how they had misread their daughter for so long. As for Brittany and me, we had taken the first step toward a new understanding, but the road ahead would be complicated. Years of established dynamics couldn't change overnight. But for the first time in a long time, I felt authentically present at a family gathering. No more hiding, no more pretending to be less than I was. I glanced at my homemade apple pie, now half-eaten on the table. It had turned out to be much more than dessert today. It had been the catalyst for truth. The remainder of Thanksgiving dinner passed in a blur of awkward conversations and readjusted perceptions. Family members approached me individually as the evening progressed, each with their own reaction to my revelation. Uncle Patrick cornered me by the refrigerator, a fresh beer in hand. So, landlord, he began with forced joviality. About that leaky faucet in my bathroom. You should submit a maintenance request through the proper channels, I replied evenly. The management company handles all repairs. Come on, Morgan. Cut your favorite uncle some slack, he pressed. Maybe waive next month's rent increase? I sighed. This was exactly what I'd feared, the expectation that family connections would influence business decisions. Patrick, I can't play favorites with tenants, even family members. It wouldn't be ethical. He frowned, clearly disappointed. I thought family was supposed to help family. I am helping by maintaining a well-run building with fair market rent. If you're having financial difficulties, that's a separate conversation we can have as family, not as landlord and tenant. He walked away grumbling, but I stood firm. This boundary setting would be essential moving forward. Aunt Grace was more supportive, pulling me into a warm hug in the hallway. Your grandmother would be so proud, she whispered. She always said you had her business sense. Remember how she taught you to count change when you were only 5? The memory made me smile. Grandma Roberts had been the family's true financial wizard, though few had recognized it. Behind Grandpa's successful career had been her careful investments and property management. Perhaps I had inherited more from her than just a recipe for apple pie crust. Thanks, Aunt Grace. That means a lot. Amanda and her husband approached next, their expressions a mix of wariness and curiosity. So, about those renovations, Amanda began hesitantly. Will our rent go up a lot afterward? We're trying to save for a house down payment. I appreciated her directness. There will be some increase to cover costs, but I've built in caps. And actually, if you're serious about buying, I could put you in touch with my real estate attorney. He knows about some first-time homebuyer programs that might help. Her face brightened. Really? That would be amazing. Just email me. My work address is best. As they walked away, I caught Rachel smiling at me from across the room. At least one person seemed genuinely happy about my success, without any ulterior motives. My parents had been unusually quiet since the initial revelation. They sat together on Brittany's plush sofa, occasionally whispering to each other and glancing my way. Finally, as the gathering began to wind down, they gestured for me to join them. Morgan, Dad began awkwardly, your mother and I have been talking and, well, we owe you an apology. This wasn't what I'd expected. An apology? For what? Mom reached for my hand. For not seeing you. Really seeing you. All these years, we thought you were struggling or underachieving or just not living up to your potential. We pushed you to be more like your sister, Dad continued, when you were succeeding brilliantly in your own way. We're so proud of you, Mom added, her eyes glistening. Not because of the properties or the money, but because you had the wisdom and discipline to build something substantial on your own terms. Their words loosened something tight in my chest that I hadn't realized was there. Despite everything, their approval still mattered to me. Thank you, I said simply. That means more than you know. Dad cleared his throat, clearly emotional. But we're curious. Why did you choose real estate? Neither of us ever showed any interest in property investment. Grandma, I explained. Remember those summers the first met with her while Brittany was at soccer camp? She taught me about investing, showed me her property ledgers, took me along when she collected rent checks. My parents exchanged surprised glances. Mother never mentioned that, Dad said. I think she liked having it be our secret. I smiled at the memory. She said the women in our family needed to be financially independent, not just rely on husbands or inheritances. Mom shook her head in wonder. All this time. I wish we'd known, Dad added. We could have supported you, helped you somehow. I needed to do it myself, I explained gently. And honestly, I wasn't sure you'd approve of my methods. Living frugally, driving an old car, staying in a modest apartment, it's not exactly the Roberts family way. They had the grace to look somewhat embarrassed at this truth. Well, we're trying to learn from our mistakes, Mom said, starting with how we discuss money and success in this family. As we talked, I noticed Brittany standing alone in the kitchen, methodically packing leftover food into containers. Her movements were precise, almost mechanical, her expression unreadable. I should talk to her, I said, nodding toward my sister. My parents followed my gaze. She's taking it hard, Dad warned. Feels like her whole identity has been challenged. I know, I sighed. but we can't avoid each other forever. I made my way to the kitchen, picking up a stack of plates to help with the cleanup. For several minutes, Brittany and I worked in silence, falling into the rhythm we'd established as teenagers assigned to dish duty. "You don't have to help," she finally said, not meeting my eyes. "I'm sure you have more important landlord things to do." I set down the plate I was rinsing. "Brittany, can we talk? Really talk?" She paused, then turned off the water.
Fine.
But not here, with everyone watching. We slipped down the hallway to her home office, closing the door behind us. The room was impeccably decorated like the rest of her apartment, with a glass desk, ergonomic chair, and framed awards from her marketing career displayed prominently on the walls. "I'm listening," she said, crossing her arms defensively. "I never meant to hurt you," I began. "Keeping my investments private wasn't about deceiving you specifically. It was about finding my own path without judgment or interference." "But why buy this building?" she demanded. "Of all the properties in the city, you had to choose the one where I live?" "It was a business decision," I explained. "The location, the condition, the return potential, it all made sense. Yes, I knew you lived here, but the management company handles everything. I don't see your personal information or payment history. But you knew about the rent increases. You approved them." I nodded. "Market standard increases that would have happened regardless of who owned the building. Actually, I kept them lower than the previous owner planned." Brittany was quiet for a moment, processing this. "It still feels weird, like you've been watching me, judging my life choices." "That's not true," I insisted. "But I could say the same about you. Haven't you been judging my choices for years? My car, my clothes, my job, even my homemade dessert." She had the grace to look slightly ashamed. "I thought I was trying to help you aim higher." "By mocking me? By making me feel less than at every family gathering?" "I didn't think of it as mocking," she said defensively. "More like sisterly pushing." I raised an eyebrow. "Too poor for proper dessert?" Brittany winced. "Okay, that was mean."
I'm sorry.
The apology, simple as it was, caught me by surprise. Brittany rarely admitted when she was wrong.
Thank you, I said softly.
She sank into her desk chair, suddenly looking exhausted. "I just don't understand why you live the way you do, if you don't have to. If I had your money, I wouldn't be driving a 10-year-old Honda or living in a duplex." "That's the difference between us," I explained. "For you, money is about what you can buy, the lifestyle you can display. For me, it's about security and freedom. Every frugal choice means more to invest, which means more options later." "But aren't you missing out on enjoying life now?" "Who says I'm not enjoying life?" I countered. "I love my job. I love my home. I don't need luxury brands or five-star restaurants to be happy." Brittany looked genuinely perplexed by this concept. "I just always thought more was better." "More isn't always better. Enough is better." I leaned against her bookshelf. "The question is, what's enough for you? When do you get to stop striving for more and just be content?" My sister didn't have an immediate answer. For perhaps the first time, I'd given her something to genuinely think about. "I don't know," she admitted finally. "I never really thought about it that way." From the living room, we could hear the sounds of family members preparing to leave, saying their goodbyes. Our private conversation had stretched longer than I'd realized. "We should get back," Brittany said, standing up, "before they send a search party." I nodded, but hesitated at the door. "Are we okay? I mean, not completely okay, but can we work on this?" My sister regarded me thoughtfully. "I think so. It's going to take some getting used to, my little sister the secret millionaire." "I'm not a millionaire," I corrected automatically. She raised an eyebrow. "Your property portfolio says otherwise." "On paper, maybe. But it's mostly leveraged assets and reinvested capital. It's not like I have millions sitting in a bank account." Brittany actually laughed. "Only you would argue against being called a millionaire." She shook her head. "We have a lot to learn about each other, it seems." As we rejoined the family, I felt a cautious hope. The revelation had been painful and messy, but perhaps necessary. For the first time in years, Brittany and I had spoken honestly, without the protective shields we'd both constructed. Saying goodbye to everyone was a strange experience. Family members who had always treated me with casual dismissal now regarded me with new respect or awkward uncertainty. I wasn't sure which was worse. As I collected my nearly empty pie dish and prepared to leave, Rachel gave me a fierce hug. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "Not for the money stuff, but for finally standing up for yourself." "Thanks for always seeing me," I replied, suddenly emotional. Even before all this, my parents hugged me longer than usual, as if trying to make up for years of misunderstanding in a single embrace. "We'll call you tomorrow," Mom promised. "Maybe we can have lunch this weekend, just the four of us?" I nodded, knowing we had much more to discuss as a family. Brittany's goodbye was the most surprising. Instead of her usual air kiss, she gave me a real hug. "This doesn't mean I forgive you for the secret landlord thing," she murmured. "But I am sorry about the dessert comment. Your pie was actually really good." I laughed softly. High praise from the queen of Bellini's bakery. As I drove home in my perfectly functional Honda, I felt lighter than I had in years. The secret was out. The reaction had been mixed, messy, and complicated, just like family itself. But it was real, and after years of hiding parts of myself, real felt revolutionary. 6 months after the Thanksgiving revelation, I stood in the lobby of my apartment building, the 16-unit property that had been at the center of our family drama, waiting for Brittany to arrive. We had scheduled a meeting to discuss the renovation plans, something that would have been unimaginable half a year ago. The glass doors swung open, and my sister walked in, looking polished as always in a tailored blazer and designer jeans. But something was different about her these days, a subtle shift in how she carried herself, less concerned with projecting an image and more authentically present. "Am I late?" she asked, checking her watch. "Right on time," I assured her. "The contractor's meeting us on the 3rd floor. I want to show you the model unit we've completed." As we rode the elevator, Brittany asked, "Have you told the other tenants about the owner coming to inspect the renovations?" I smiled. "No, I'm still just Morgan from the environmental consulting firm as far as they know. The management company handles official communications." After the Thanksgiving dinner revelation, my family and I had embarked on a complicated journey of reassessment and reconnection. The changes hadn't happened overnight, but gradually, conversation by conversation, we had begun to build something new from the rubble of old misunderstandings. Mom and Dad had been the first to adapt, inviting me to share more about my investment strategies and business decisions. Dad, who had spent decades chasing the appearance of wealth while accumulating debt, was particularly interested in learning about financial independence. "I wish I'd understood this 30 years ago," he had confessed during one of our Sunday coffee meetings. "We might have had a much more secure retirement." Uncle Patrick had taken longer to come around, initially resentful that I wouldn't give him special treatment as a tenant. But after I helped him refinance his car loan and set up a retirement account, he began to see that I could support him in ways that didn't compromise my business ethics. The most significant change, though, had been with Brittany. After the initial shock and hurt had worn off, my sister had approached me with unexpected vulnerability. "I need help," she had admitted over dinner one evening in January. "I'm drowning in credit card debt, and I don't know how to fix it." That conversation had marked the beginning of a new chapter in our relationship. Over the past months, I had helped Brittany create a budget, negotiate with creditors, and develop a plan to become debt-free within 3 years. In return, she had helped me update my professional wardrobe and improve my presentation skills for meetings with potential investors. "This unit looks amazing," Brittany commented as we walked through the model apartment with its new energy-efficient appliances, updated fixtures, and fresh paint. "Much nicer than I expected for the budget you mentioned." "That's the advantage of having good contractor relationships and being willing to buy materials in bulk," I explained. "The upgrades will pay for themselves through energy savings and increased property value." "Smart," she nodded appreciatively. "Are you still planning to keep rent increases under 5% after renovations?"
Yes.
"I want long-term tenants who care about the building, not constant turnover." After our meeting with the contractor, Brittany and I walked to a nearby cafe, something that had become our monthly tradition. Over coffee, we continued to rebuild our relationship, finding common ground we had never bothered to look for before. Amanda told me you helped her and Jeff get pre-approved for a mortgage, Brittany mentioned, stirring her latte. That was really nice of you. I shrugged. They're good people who just needed some guidance on improving their credit score and understanding the home buying process. You know, you could charge for that kind of financial advice, my sister suggested, ever the marketing professional. There are plenty of people who would pay for your knowledge. The idea wasn't new. Rachel had suggested something similar, but hearing it from Brittany felt significant. Maybe someday. For now, I'm focused on growing my property portfolio and keeping my environmental work balanced. Brittany studied me thoughtfully. You've actually had it figured out all along, haven't you? While the rest of us were chasing the next promotion or luxury purchase, you were building something sustainable. I wouldn't say I had it all figured out, I demurred. I just chose a different path. A better path, she admitted. Do you know I haven't used my credit cards in 4 months? Everything's cash or debit now. It feels strangely freeing. I smiled, genuinely proud of her progress. That's huge, Britt. Seriously. It's all because of you, she said, uncharacteristically earnest. Not just the financial advice, but seeing how you live, comfortable but not extravagant, secure but not obsessed with status symbols. It made me question what I really need to be happy. Our family dynamic had shifted in other ways too. At Easter dinner, hosted at my house this year, a first, I noticed how differently everyone interacted. The constant status comparisons had diminished, replaced by more authentic conversations. Even Aunt Grace commented on the change. It's like everyone can finally breathe, she had observed. No more peacocking around trying to impress each other. Not everything was perfect, of course. Mom still occasionally slipped into old habits, commenting on someone's cheap-looking outfit or suggesting I upgrade my car, now that I could afford it. Dad sometimes asked inappropriate questions about my net worth or property values in front of others. And Brittany and I still had moments of tension. Years of established patterns couldn't be erased in 6 months. But we were learning to communicate more honestly, to call each other out on toxic behaviors, and to appreciate our different strengths. Have you thought about what I said about the vacant commercial property on Maple Street? Brittany asked, returning to a conversation we'd started last week. I really think it has potential as a mixed-use development. This was new territory for us, my sister actually providing valuable input on my business, rather than dismissing it. Her marketing background gave her insights into neighborhood trends that complemented my financial analysis. I looked into it, I nodded. You were right about the zoning changes coming to that area. I have a meeting with the current owner next week. Brittany beamed, clearly pleased that I had taken her suggestions seriously. As we finished our coffee and prepared to part ways, Brittany to a client meeting, me to the environmental firm, I reflected on how far we had come since that Thanksgiving dinner. Oh, before I forget, Brittany said, pulling out her phone. Mom wanted me to confirm you're bringing dessert for Dad's birthday dinner Sunday. I laughed. Let me guess, she's hoping for my apple pie? Actually, she specifically requested it. Said it was better than anything from Bellini's. Coming from our mother, this was high praise indeed. Tell her I'll bring 2, I promised. 1 regular and 1 gluten-free for Uncle Patrick. As we hugged goodbye on the sidewalk, I felt a deep sense of peace. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary. By finally standing up for myself and revealing my true financial situation, I had broken the cycle of judgment and comparison that had dominated our family for decades. I had learned that building wealth quietly didn't mean I had to hide who I was or accept mistreatment. That standing up for myself could lead to healthier relationships rather than destroying them. That authenticity, even when painful initially, created space for genuine connection. And most importantly, I had discovered that family relationships, like investments, required patience, care, and occasional recalibration to truly flourish. As I walked to my car, still the same reliable Honda, though now by choice rather than perceived necessity, I smiled at the thought of Sunday's family dinner. For the first time in years, I was actually looking forward to it. Life wasn't perfect, family was still complicated. But finally being able to show up as my whole self, without pretense or minimizing my accomplishments, felt like the richest investment return of all. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have revealed your financial success sooner, or kept it private? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you've ever had to stand up to family members who underestimated you, share your story. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more real-life experiences, and hit that share button if you know someone who needs to hear this message of authenticity and financial independence. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, true wealth isn't about what you own, but the freedom to live authentically on your own terms.